What's up, guys? Welcome to G Whiskey. I'm Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and every once in a while throw in other whiskey-related content. We're still doing our end-of-year roundup videos where I'm looking back and talking about the best of the best from 2023. And today's video is going to be a list based on Malternatives. So another fun one. Stick around. Hey Jeff, how come you're wearing a Christmas sweater? Christmas is already over. Well, you're watching this from the future, but I'm actually recording this video on Christmas Day. Why am I recording a video on Christmas Day? Shouldn't you be doing something to celebrate with your friends or your family? Yes, I should, but I live in Taiwan and Christmas is not a formal holiday here, so I did actually have a good Christmas. I celebrated over the weekend, but today, Christmas Day, is a working Monday. Anyway, poor me, you don't care. Let's talk about some whiskey. And by whiskey, I mean not whiskey. Unless I do mean whiskey. What I mean is Malternatives. And Malternatives are what we turn to when we don't want single malts, but they might still be whiskey. I feel like that could have been explained better. Basically, it just means non-single malt, so it could be stuff like rum or brandy or tequila, mezcal, gins, vodka if you're desperate. I mean, it could be anything. It could be moonshine out of your uncle's bathtub. And yes, granted, that might cause blindness, but as a result, it might elevate some of your other senses. You might end up with like super hearing or something. Probably not, but it's worth a shot. Now, you might find some whiskeys on this list as long as they're not single malts. Personally, I don't include stuff like Irish whiskeys or blended scotches. I find them a little bit too similar in profile to like Scotch single malts, which is my kind of baseline. You might include them, but definitely stuff like bourbons and Canadians, those are all fair game. After all, we are talking Malternatives here, the key word being malt. So we're going to focus on malt. No, we're not. We're not focusing on malt. Malternatives, the key word being ernatives. Now, I always say that these lists are really tough to put together, and generally that's true, but that's more for the whiskey lists, because I drink a lot of single malt whiskey. In fact, a lot of my friends refer to me as an alcoholic connoisseur. So I have a lot of like brands and bottles and just experiences that I can sift through when I'm trying to cook up a whiskey list. It's a little bit different for Malternatives. Yes, I do drink Malternatives, but considerably less. So yeah, I did have a few Malternatives this year, but how many do I want to recommend to whiskey people? Because whiskey people can be very finicky. We are men and women of culture, and our tastes are very refined and sophisticated. And the high standards that we apply to whiskey are equally applied to Malternatives. So how many are actually going to stand up against a good single malt whiskey? That's the question. And with that in mind, I've got 3 Malternatives for you guys today. I can confidently say these are all very good and very reasonably priced. And yes, they can often rival or even outperform single malt whiskeys in their price categories. Finally, this list is in ascending order of awesomeness, which means my number 1 pick is my top Malternative of 2023. Also, I have a mystery pour in the glass here, guys. This is not a Malternative, kind of, although definitely it isn't. I'm being very confusing and mysterious, so you should probably stick around and find out what that is. It is really good stuff. And I guess that's it. Let's jump into our list. These are my top 3 Malternatives of 2023. Please leave a like. Kicking off our list at number 3, I've got a bourbon for you guys. This is one that I definitely didn't try for the first time in 2023, but I did come back to it this year. It's kind of an old faithful for me. That's the Eagle Rare 10. Now, if you're already deep into the bourbon scene, you've probably heard this before because this whiskey is often touted by single malt drinkers as a nice segue whiskey. So if you're coming from single malts and you want to kind of transition into the world of bourbons, this is a nice stepping stone. But they say that because it is true. If you're anything like me and you're not a big bourbon guy, then you'll probably find this one of the more welcoming bourbons out there just because it is a little bit more floral and gentle and complex than most other bourbons. I'm not going to get any hate from this in the comments, and everyone will definitely agree with me. Bourbons, or a lot of bourbons, not all, but a lot of bourbons can get a little bit boring. All right, I'm not doing a very good job of walking on eggshells here. I will see the entire United States of America down below in the comments. But really, personally, I do find a recurring theme of, very heavy woods and caramels and vanillas in bourbons. They tend to be sweeter, louder, and generally less nuanced and complex. And again, everyone in the world agrees with me. And once again, that isn't every bourbon, and that's not this bourbon. And it's nice to have a bourbon like this that is a little bit gentler and is a little bit more welcoming to us single malt snobs, and we definitely are snobs. So this is one that I do come back to every so often when I want a nice casual sipping bourbon. Doesn't cost too much, tastes great, comes in at number 3, Eagle Rare 10. Next up at number 2, I've got a bottle that quite a few people on WhiskyTube have been recommending recently as an alternative. And by quite a few, I can think of one. But it's a rum. It's a really good rum. Usually when I go for a rum that's affordable, I'll turn to something like El Dorado 12, which is good. But lately I have been turning to something a little bit more expensive, but very, very good. And that's the Dorley's 14. Now, Dorley's is a brand out of the Foursquare distillery, which is pretty much revolutionized the rum industry over the last few years. Some of their fancier bottlings can easily go toe-to-toe with top-shelf single malt whiskeys, so it's a really interesting brand, definitely one to check out. But Foursquare, a lot of it's like single cask, and again, a little bit more exclusive. If you want to bring your budget down a little bit and still have a nice rum, the Dorley's line is a good line to check out. They have a 12-year-old, which is also really good, but I think the 14 here is the most old. And by most old, I mean oldest. So we are getting a nice age statement here. We have a nice ABV. This one comes in at 48%, some nice complexity. It's expensive for a basic rum, but it's cheap for a premium rum, and it does fall nicely in that sort of middle range category. Personally, if I'm dishing out the big bucks, I'm gonna spend that on a whiskey. I don't want to go too over the top with rums, so this is still somewhat in my comfort zone, and I know I'm getting a good rum. So it's something you can check out if you're interested. If you're into rum, this stuff doesn't get too sweet, it's not too cloying. Foursquare, again, they make really good stuff. So there we go, Dorley's 14. All right, so my alternative of the year is obviously something that really impressed me this year. It's not something I can buy in my market, unfortunately, but it does have pretty wide distribution. This is something that is age stated, it's cask strength, and it's affordable. So we got a trifecta there. It's amazing stuff. It's an Armagnac. It's the Tariquet 15. Now, disclaimer, I really love Armagnac. I know stuff like rum, and to a lesser extent, stuff like tequilas and mezcals are really hot as alternatives from the whiskey drinker's perspective these days. But as far as I'm concerned, nothing can really beat out a fine French brandy, and I have a particular affinity for Armagnac. With regards to our Tariquet 15 here, if you're a fan of very dark leather and tobacco notes in whiskey, you should get along with this one just fine. For me, I often say that this does what those dark, aged, sherried Bowmores are often trying to do with those rich tobacco and leather notes, only this stuff does it better. And what's nice about this one is that it's part of a series, and there's a bunch of different age statements that you can choose from. They're all cask strength. I've had the 8, the 12, and the 15, but you can go much older, and I'm hoping to snag some of the older bottlings at some point because they're not too expensive. Armagnac tends to be pretty affordable. The 8 and the 12 also recommended, but the 15 here, easily my favorite, again, just because they really nail those rich tobacco and leather notes. This is meaty and it's savory, it's big, it's complex, it's got the Tariquet house style in spades. Now, if you're familiar with Armagnac, you might know Tariquet because it is one of the bigger houses, but it's also one of my favorite houses. Even if I'm having just a very simple 40% VSOP, the Tariquet, always a brand I can rely on. But these age-stated cask strength expressions, the entire line, at least the ones that I've tried so far, really do take things to the next level. They're so flavorsome and rich and Moorish. These are some of the most reachable bottles that I have on my shelf, and I reach for them more often than I reach for most of the whiskeys that I have. Absolutely incredible. Again, particularly the 15, but if you can find any of these, grab them. I know they should be available across Europe, likely the UK. I'm not too sure about Canada or Australia or the United States. Hopefully you guys can find them because, damn. So yeah, there we go. Tariquet 15, my alternative of the year for 2023. Absolutely incredible stuff. All right, that was it, guys. That was the list. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep in mind, this is kind of a case of the blind leading the blind. I'm definitely much more in my comfort zone when I'm talking about single malt whiskeys. Malternatives, just something I have far, far less experience with, which means I'm going to be particularly interested in reading the comments down below and seeing your recommendations. And if possible, I would love to hear recommendations that are not just good malternatives, but I want to hear about malternatives that are good for whiskey lovers. So if we're coming from that world of single malt whiskeys and we want to kind of broaden our horizons, but still find something that matches our tastes and our sensibilities, that would be great. Those are the kind of bottles that I'd be particularly interested in. So what do you got? Anyway, finally, if you stuck around to find out what the mystery pour in the glass is, what I've got here is not a malternative, but I kind of categorize it as a malternative just because it's very different from anything I've had before or anything I know. What it is an American single malt. And the bottle I've got is the Lineage release. Now, this is a single malt from the Balcones distillery. I think it's called Balcones. I've definitely heard people say it out loud before. It's either Balcones or Balcones. Definitely not balconies. Anyway, this is a very affordable whiskey. It's a really pleasant sipper. It's rich. It's sweet. It's not like the most complex or nuanced whiskey out there, but the flavors are good. We get lots of like almonds and cherries and vanillas. Really well done. For me, this one is a little bit similar to the Eagle Rare in the sense that it's in the world between single malts and bourbons. Now, of course, in any formal way, Eagle Rare is a bourbon and this is a single malt, but in terms of flavors, in terms of profile, it walks that nice, middle ground. It's an interesting area of flavor to explore. So yeah, Eagle Rare or this one, both recommended. Check them out if you want to segue into bourbons or vice versa, I suppose. And that's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to help out the channel, I do it with the Patreon. Otherwise, you can like, comment, subscribe. Always appreciated. And of course, I'm looking forward to reading your comments down below. I'm looking forward to finding out about some more alternatives that I can sink my teeth into. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.